My name is Camille Hart. I'm 31. And I'm sitting in an apartment that feels like it exhaled after holding its breath for 4 years. The place is quiet in a way that should feel lonely. Instead, it feels clean, like someone finally opened a window after smoke filled the room for too long. On my kitchen counter, there's a small mountain of wedding invitations, cream cardstock, gold lettering, his family's name spelled perfectly, my family's name spelled perfectly, like that mattered. Half of them are torn in uneven strips. The rest are shoved into a black trash bag that's already sagging under the weight of a life that was supposed to happen. The wedding was supposed to be in 4 months. Now there's no wedding, no fiancé. And the weirdest part? I'm not breaking. 2 weeks ago, I thought my future was locked in. Venues, deposits, dress fittings, guest lists, the whole glossy "we did it" package. 2 Fridays ago, my fiancé, Dylan, sat me down like he was about to confess a crime. We'd been together 4 years, engaged for 1. He was 29, tall, clean cut, that kind of good looking that made older women in grocery stores smile at him like he was their son. The kind of guy people described as solid. I used to love that word, solid, because solid meant safe. It meant he wasn't the type to ruin your life in one sentence. I was wrong. It was a Friday night. Nothing dramatic, no storm outside, no tense music in the background, just the soft hum of the dishwasher and the smell of the chicken I'd just pulled out of the oven. He turned the TV off mid-show. That alone made my stomach tighten. Dalen didn't do mid-show. Dellen didn't interrupt anything unless it mattered to him. "Can we talk?" he asked. He had that voice, the one that pretended to be calm but always sounded like he was holding a knife behind his back. I wiped my hands on a towel and sat across from him at the small dining table we'd picked out together the year we moved in. The table that had seen takeout nights, budget planning, and the kind of conversations that start with "we" and end with "forever." My mind ran through possibilities. Vendor issues, family drama, cold feet. Not once did it occur to me he was about to renegotiate the entire foundation of our relationship like it was a subscription plan. He folded his hands on the table, elbows planted, leaning forward like he was in a podcast studio. "Camille," he started. That alone was a warning sign. He usually called me Cam, or Babe. Camille meant he was about to say something that required a legal tone. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, "about us, about marriage, about what I need to feel fulfilled." I didn't respond right away. Dylan loved dramatic pauses. He loved to speak like he was delivering wisdom and not an agenda. So I just looked at him, let the silence stretch. He cleared his throat. "I want an open relationship." I blinked once. Then I leaned back in my chair, like maybe distance would change the words I'd heard. "Come again," I said, calm enough that even I surprised myself. He nodded like I'd asked him to repeat a restaurant order. "An open relationship," he said. "Ethical non-monogamy." He emphasized ethical like that made it clean. Like non-monogamy was just a modern vitamin people took for emotional health. "It's actually very common now," he added quickly. "Very healthy for modern couples." I stared at him. Our wedding was in 4 months. Not 4 years. Not some vague timeline. 4 months. The invites were printed. The deposits were paid. Families had blocked off their calendars. And he was sitting here saying words like ethical and common, like he was casually suggesting we try oat milk. "Dylan," I said slowly, "our wedding is in 4 months." His face softened, and he reached across the table, grabbing my hands. That move used to work on me. That move used to make me feel like we were on the same team. Now it felt like a tactic. "Exactly," he said. "Before we commit to forever, I need to know I won't feel trapped, restricted." He squeezed my fingers. I need freedom to explore connections if they arise naturally. I pulled my hands back. Not dramatically, just enough. "So you want to date other people," I said. He shook his head like I was being crude. "We would have the freedom to date other people," he corrected, "if the opportunity presents itself." He held up a finger, lecturing. "It's not about actively seeking it out, it's just being open to life's possibilities." He said it like he'd practiced in front of a mirror. I could almost hear the background music of whatever influencer he'd been listening to. "And if I say no?" I asked. The shift in him was instant, like a light flicked. His eyes hardened. His jaw set. Then he leaned back, arms crossing, and his tone went flat. "Then there's no wedding." There it was. Not a discussion, not a concern, not a question. A threat. "I can't marry someone who wants to control me," he added. Control him, by wanting monogamy in a marriage. I let a breath out through my nose, more of a controlled exhale than a laugh. Let me get this straight, I said, keeping my voice even. Either we open our relationship, or you're calling off the wedding. He nodded, like he was proud of his clarity. I need to know you respect my autonomy, he said. Autonomy. That word. That word is supposed to mean independence, freedom, choice. But coming from Delon in that moment, it meant something else. It meant do what I want, or I walk. Here's what made it worse. This didn't come out of nowhere. Over the last few months, Dylan had gotten into self-discovery content. Podcasts, clips. These slick, confident voices talking about expanding consciousness and not limiting your potential. He started using phrases that weren't his. Growth. Evolved. Secure attachment. Relationship anarchy. He joined this men's empowerment circle that met on Thursdays. Always came home smelling like coffee and self-righteousness. He'd sit on the couch afterward, scrolling through posts from people who spoke in bullet points about life like they were writing captions, not living it. And there was one name he mentioned more than once. Astrid. A woman from that circle who apparently had an open marriage and loved to talk about it like it was a trophy. Dylan would bring her up casually. Yeah, Astrid says jealousy is just insecurity. Astrid and her husband are so evolved. Astrid said monogamy is a social construct. And now, suddenly, he was sitting in our kitchen, acting like he'd invented the concept. So this is about Astrid, I said, not accusing, just testing. He snapped. This is about me, he said, about what I need. Then, like he couldn't help himself, he added, God, Camille, try to evolve a little. That one landed, not because it hurt like a knife, because it confirmed something that had been quietly growing in the background for months. He didn't see me as a partner. He saw me as a position. Fiancé, future wife, accessory, a stable piece in the life he wanted to build, until he decided stability was boring. I sat there, looking at the man I'd planned to marry, and my brain ran through the numbers like a spreadsheet. 4 years together. Deposits paid. Families invited. Catering meeting scheduled in 2 weeks. My mother already talking about table settings. His mother already calling me daughter. And here he was, giving me an ultimatum like I was negotiating rent. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't slam a door. I just let the silence sit long enough that he shifted in his seat. Then I nodded. Okay, I said. His face lit up so fast it was almost comical. Really? He said, leaning forward again, eyes bright. Oh my God, babe, I knew you'd understand. He reached for my hands again. You're so mature, he added, like he was congratulating me for not being difficult. We'll have an open relationship, I said, still calm. He nodded eagerly. Yes, exactly. Then he hesitated and a little smirk tugged at his mouth. Though, he said carefully, I mean, you're so busy with work, and you're not really the type to, There it was. He thought I'd agree, then stay still. He thought he'd unlock the ability to do whatever he wanted, while I sat at home being grateful he still planned to marry me. I looked at him for a long second. Then I gave a small, controlled nod. Starting now, I said, both of us. Equal opportunity. He beamed. Theoretically, he said, like it was a joke. No, not theoretically. Not in my world. I stood up, picked up my plate, and walked it to the sink like this was any other conversation. Like he hadn't just put a match to the life we'd built. When I turned back, he was still smiling, relieved, smug, convinced he'd won. I met his eyes. Sounds fair, I said. And in that moment, something in me clicked into place. Because if we were playing this game, then we were both playing. He went to bed that night lighter than I'd ever seen him. Relaxed, victorious. Like a man who'd just negotiated himself a better deal and assumed the other party didn't understand the fine print. Dylan fell asleep fast, one arm draped over my side of the bed, breathing deep and even, like the conversation we'd just had was a minor adjustment instead of a controlled demolition. I lay there staring at the ceiling. Not crying, not spiraling, just recalibrating. Because something important had shifted. I wasn't heartbroken yet. I was alert. You learn a lot about someone in the seconds after they think they've won. Dylan didn't ask how I felt. Didn't check if I needed time. Didn't talk about boundaries or emotions or what this change might do to us. He just rolled over, kissed my shoulder, and murmured, I'm proud of you. Proud. Like I'd passed a test. That word stayed with me. The next morning, he left early for work, humming as he grabbed his keys. This is going to be really good for us, he said, for our growth. I smiled back. Not because I agreed, but because I wanted him comfortable. I wanted him careless. As soon as the door closed, the apartment felt different. Not empty. Strategic. I poured myself coffee and opened my phone. I didn't rush to dating apps. I didn't announce anything. I just looked at the world Dylan had always assumed was background noise. That Saturday morning, he left for brunch with his empowerment group. I went to the gym. Halfway through my workout, I ran into Ethan, one of Delan's longtime friends. We'd known each other casually for years. Group events, holidays, surface-level conversations. "Cam," he said, surprised. "Didn't know you worked out here." "Started coming more often," I replied. "Wedding stress." He chuckled. "Tell me about it. How's planning going?" I paused, then chose honesty. "We opened the relationship," I said. His smile vanished. "You're kidding." "No." He stared at me for a second, then shook his head. "He did this now?" he asked. "With the wedding so close?" "4 months," I said. "That's not okay," Ethan muttered. "He's been talking about this for a while." There it was again. "For how long?" I asked. He hesitated. "Months," he admitted. Always framed it like a philosophy thing. Freedom. Exploration. "And did he ever mention how I felt about it?" Ethan looked away. "He assumed you'd go along with it." I nodded. After the workout, Ethan asked if I wanted to grab coffee. "Just to catch up," he said quickly. "No weirdness." I agreed. Coffee turned into conversation. Not flirting. Not chemistry. Just honesty. He listened when I spoke, didn't interrupt, didn't minimize. Later that day, another message came in. "Marcus, a colleague of Dylan's I'd met at company events. Hey Cam, heard about the open relationship thing. Just wanted to check in. You okay?" We met for a drink that evening. Again, no romance. Just perspective. Sunday night, I had dinner with Ryan, another man from Dylan's extended social circle who'd always been respectful. By Monday morning, my phone was silent. Until it wasn't. I was making breakfast when the front door slammed open. Dylan stormed in, phone in hand, eyes wild. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. He shoved his phone in my face. Photos. Coffee, drinks, dinner. All innocent. All undeniable. I flipped my eggs calmly. "Coffee with a friend," I said. "Drinks with a friend. Dinner with a friend." "What are you doing?" he snapped. I turned, spatula in hand. "Exploring connections," I said evenly. "Being open to life's possibilities." We didn't agree to this. "To dating?" I asked. "That's literally what an open relationship is. Not with people I know." "Was that a rule?" I asked. "Because I don't remember that part." "It's obvious." "Obvious like your ex?" I asked quietly. His face flushed. "That's different." "How?" He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. And that's when I realized something important. He didn't want an open relationship. He wanted permission. And he never expected me to actually participate. The shift didn't happen all at once. It crept in quietly, through Dylan's posture, his tone, the way his confidence started arriving late to conversations it used to dominate. At first, he pretended nothing was wrong. He'd leave for work like always, kiss my cheek, ask if I wanted anything for dinner. He even used that calm, rehearsed voice again, the one he saved for moments when he thought he was still in control. But I noticed the cracks. He checked his phone more, asked questions that sounded casual but weren't. "So, what are you up to today? Anyone interesting reach out?" I answered honestly, briefly, without performance. "Yes, maybe. We'll see." That uncertainty unsettled him more than anger ever could, because uncertainty meant I wasn't waiting. I wasn't frozen. I was moving without asking permission. That Wednesday evening, I met Evan, a man Dylan had worked with years ago. We'd crossed paths at office parties, mutual gatherings. Always polite, always respectful. He asked if I wanted to grab dinner, just dinner. I said yes. The restaurant wasn't romantic. No candles, no whispered promises. Just two adults sitting across from each other, talking without subtext. He asked me what I wanted out of life, not what I was willing to tolerate. Not what I was afraid of losing, what I wanted. I realized I couldn't remember the last time Dylan had asked me that. When I got home, Dylan was already there, sitting on the couch, phone face down on his knee. "How was your night?" he asked too quickly. "Good," I said, hanging my coat. "Dinner with Evan." His jaw tightened. "Oh," he said. "Didn't know you two were that close." "We weren't," I replied. "We're getting to know each other." He nodded like he accepted that. He didn't. That night he barely slept. I knew because he shifted constantly. Checked the time. Rolled over. Rolled back. At one point he whispered, "You okay?" "I'm fine," I said. And I was. The next morning my phone buzzed while I was at work. "Dylan, we need to talk about boundaries." I waited. Then replied, "Me, what boundaries?" The typing bubble appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Dylan, this isn't what I meant by open relationship." I smiled at my desk. Not because it was funny. Because it was inevitable. That evening, he was waiting when I walked in. Standing, arms crossed, jaw tight. "This isn't working," he said before I could even set my bag down. I looked at him calmly. "What isn't?" "This," he said, gesturing between us. "You going out, seeing people, posting things." I thought that was the point, I replied. Exploring connections. With strangers, he snapped, not people I know. I tilted my head slightly. You didn't specify that. It's implied. Implied isn't a rule, I said evenly. You were very clear about the ultimatum. You weren't very clear about the structure. His voice rose. You're being deliberately obtuse. I stepped closer, not aggressive, just present. No, I said, I'm being literal. You wanted an open relationship. I agreed. I'm participating. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. This feels vindictive. Why? I asked. Because I'm not waiting quietly? He stopped pacing and looked at me. That's not fair. I didn't say it was, I replied. I said it was what you asked for. Silence stretched between us. Then he tried something new. This isn't how it's supposed to work, he said, softer now. In healthy, open relationships, there are guidelines. I nodded. Okay, I said. What guidelines did we agree on? He opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled sharply. I didn't think I'd have to spell it out. And there it was. The assumption. He thought I'd nod, adapt, and self-edit. He thought my role was to accommodate his evolution, not have one of my own. That weekend, I met Jordan, a man from my own professional circle. No connection to Dylan, no overlap, just conversation. When Dylan found out, he didn't explode. He withdrew. He got quiet. And quiet was worse. By Sunday night, the tension was thick enough to taste. He finally broke. I didn't think you'd actually enjoy this, he admitted. I looked at him. That sounds like a you problem, I said calmly. He stared at me, stunned. I thought you'd try it, he continued, voice strained, then realized it wasn't for you. And if it is, I asked? He didn't answer, because for the first time since he'd issued that ultimatum, he was facing a reality he hadn't planned for. A version of me who wasn't grateful for scraps. A version of me who didn't need permission to exist fully. That night, as he lay awake beside me again, I understood something with absolute clarity. He didn't want equality. He wanted leverage. And he was starting to realize he'd lost it. By Monday, Dalen had moved from denial to damage control. He didn't say it outright, but I could feel it in the way he watched me, like he was tracking a stock he thought he owned and had suddenly lost access to. That evening, I walked into the apartment and found him sitting at the dining table. Not scrolling, not pacing, waiting. In front of him was a neat stack of papers. Printed, stapled, highlighted. I stopped a few feet away and raised an eyebrow. What's this? I asked. He straightened, already in explanation mode. I've been doing research, he said, about ethical non-monogamy. Structure is important. I didn't sit down. Structure for what? I asked. For us, he replied quickly. For this to work. He slid the papers toward me like a contract. At the top, in bold, was a title that made me almost laugh. Open Relationship Guidelines. I picked them up and skimmed. Rule 1. No dating each other's friends. Rule 2. No posting dates or interactions on social media. Rule 3. Weekends are reserved for the primary partner. Rule 4. All dates must be disclosed in advance. Rule 5. Either partner may veto a connection at any time. I looked up slowly. These are new, I said. They're standard, he replied. Healthy, open relationships have boundaries. Where did you get these? I asked. He hesitated. From a foundation, he said. Ethical non-monogamy. They publish best practices. I took out my phone, typed for exactly 10 seconds, and turned the screen toward him. No such foundation exists, I said. His jaw tightened. You can't just make rules after the fact, I continued. You gave me an ultimatum. I agreed. Now you want to renegotiate because you don't like how it's playing out. It's about respect, he snapped. I nodded slowly. Respect, I repeated. You threatened to cancel our wedding if I didn't comply. Where was respect then? He stood up. I was being honest about my needs. And I'm being honest about mine, I replied. I am participating in the relationship structure you demanded. This isn't how it's supposed to work, he said, voice rising. How is it supposed to work? I asked calmly. You date whoever you want, and I stay home being supportive? That's not what I said. It's what you assumed. He looked away. Then came the slip. You're supposed to be more selective, he muttered. I tilted my head. I am, I said. I'm selecting people who treat me with respect. That's not what I meant. What did you mean, Dylan? I asked. Say it. Silence, because the truth sounded ugly out loud. He didn't want an open relationship. He wanted controlled freedom. That night, my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan, his friend, the one who'd been honest with me early on. Hey, just a heads up. Delon's freaking out in the group chat, saying you're doing this to punish him. I stared at the screen. Punish him. By agreeing to his terms. I typed back. Thanks for telling me. When I looked up, Dylan was watching me from across the room. Who's that? He asked. A friend, I said. His mouth tightened again. Tuesday morning, I got another message. This time from Ethan again. Also, you should probably know this. He's been talking to his ex for a while, says it's just emotional. There it was, the missing piece sliding into place. I didn't respond right away. I went to work, took meetings, answered emails. By the time I got home that evening, I wasn't angry. I was clear. Dalen was already there, pacing. We need to reset, he said as soon as I walked in. This has gone off the rails. Has it? I asked. Yes, he insisted. You're turning this into something it was never meant to be. No, I said quietly. I'm turning it into what it actually is. He stopped pacing. What's that supposed to mean? It means you wanted permission, I said, not partnership. His eyes flashed. That's not fair. Neither is threatening to cancel a wedding to get what you want, I replied. He scoffed. You're twisting everything. No, I said, I'm finally seeing it straight. He looked at me then, not angry, not smug, but unsettled. Because for the first time, the rules he tried to impose weren't protecting him. They were exposing him. And deep down, he knew it. By Wednesday, the truth stopped arriving in pieces. It came in waves. Not dramatic, not explosive. Just steady, undeniable confirmation that I hadn't imagined any of it. That afternoon, I met Ethan again, this time intentionally. Not to vent, not to strategize, just to listen. We sat at a quiet cafe near his office. Neutral territory, no subtext. He looked uncomfortable before I even asked anything. I don't want to make this worse, he said. But I also don't think it's fair that you're the only one in the dark. I'm listening, I replied. He exhaled. Dalen's been talking about opening the relationship for a long time, he admitted. Not like a hypothetical, like a plan. A small part of me tightened. Not in pain, in confirmation. How long? I asked. Before the engagement, he said. Definitely before you two started putting deposits down. I nodded once. And his ex? I asked. Ethan hesitated again, then nodded. He reconnected with her months ago, he said. Said it was emotional, not physical. That he just needed closure. Closure. That word men use when they want to reopen a door without admitting why. So when he gave me the ultimatum, I said slowly, it wasn't about growth. No, Ethan said quietly. It was about permission. I stared into my coffee. 4 years. Engaged. And he'd been setting this up like a chessboard while I was still playing checkers. He assumed you'd agree, Ethan continued. He kept saying you were reasonable, stable, that you wouldn't walk away over something like this. There it was again. Stable, safe, predictable. He meant manageable. What did he say about me once I did agree? I asked. Ethan's jaw tightened. That you'd eventually get uncomfortable, he said. That you'd try it, then retreat. That you weren't really competitive. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it explained everything. That night when I got home, Dalen was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter like he'd been waiting. How was your day? He asked. Productive, I said, setting my bag down. He nodded, watching me carefully. I've been thinking, he said. Maybe we rushed into this open thing. I met his eyes. No, I replied. You didn't rush, you planned. His expression stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? It means, I said calmly, you were talking to your ex long before you ever talked to me. Silence. Not denial. Not outrage. Just silence. That told me everything. It was emotional, he said finally. Nothing happened. You don't get credit for restraint you never intended to keep, I replied. He stepped closer. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said, I'm putting it in proportion. His voice sharpened. I came to you instead of cheating. You came to me with an ultimatum, I corrected. That's not honesty, that's leverage. He ran a hand through his hair. You're acting like I'm the villain. I'm acting like someone who finally understands the situation, I said. He stared at me, searching for something. Guilt, fear, hesitation. He didn't find it. Instead, he found resolve. You really think you're better off without me? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know, because I wanted to be precise. I think, I said slowly, I've been settling for someone who confused control with compatibility. That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders tensed, in the way his mouth opened, then closed. He tried one last angle. You're letting other people influence you. No, I said. I'm letting the truth catch up. That night, he didn't sleep beside me. He took the couch. And for the first time since this all started, the apartment felt like it was mine again. Not because I'd won, but because I'd stopped losing myself to someone else's terms. And somewhere between that quiet and the certainty settling in my chest, I knew this wasn't heading toward compromise. It was heading toward an ending. The shift from confidence to panic happened faster than I expected. One day, Dalen was negotiating. The next, he was unraveling. It started subtly, like most breakdowns do. He came home early with groceries I didn't ask for, cooked dinner without mentioning the open relationship once, lit a candle, put on music we used to listen to before everything had an agenda. It was almost impressive, if I hadn't already seen behind the curtain. Thought we could just reconnect tonight, he said, sliding a plate toward me. No heavy talks. I sat down, ate a few bites, let the moment exist. Then I said, I have plans after this. His smile twitched. Plans, he repeated. With? A friend, I replied evenly. His fork hit the plate a little too hard. You're doing this on purpose, he said. I looked up. Doing what? Keeping me off balance, he snapped, going out, acting detached. You're punishing me. I set my fork down. No, I said. I'm living inside the rules you created. That's not what I wanted, he raised his voice. There it was. The crack. What did you want? I asked quietly. He stood pacing now. I wanted honesty, growth, balance. You wanted control, I said. You just didn't expect resistance. He stopped pacing and faced me. You've changed, he said. I nodded. Yes. That answer seemed to scare him more than denial ever could. He tried the next tactic that night. Love bombing. Compliments, memories, promises. You know we're good together, he said. 4 years isn't nothing. I know, I replied. That's why I didn't take this lightly. You're throwing everything away over a misunderstanding, he insisted. No, I said. I'm ending something that was already being dismantled without my consent. His jaw clenched. You're being dramatic. I stood up. Dylan, I said calmly, you threatened our wedding to get permission to pursue someone else. That's not drama. That's a decision. The word decision hung in the air like a verdict. The next morning, my phone exploded. Missed calls, texts, long paragraphs sent and unsent. He oscillated between anger and fear so quickly it was dizzying. We need to set boundaries. This is getting unhealthy. You're listening to the wrong people. I don't recognize you. That last one almost made me smile, because I finally did. That evening, he crossed another line. I came home to find him scrolling through my phone. Not sneakily, openly, like he still had access. What are you doing? I asked. He didn't look up. I'm trying to understand who you're talking to, he said, since you won't tell me. I held his gaze. Put it down, I said. He scoffed. See, this is what I mean. You're hiding things. You lost the right to transparency when you used an ultimatum as leverage, I replied. Put it down. He hesitated, then slowly placed my phone on the counter. You're making me the bad guy, he said. No, I said. You're doing that yourself. That was the moment something in him snapped. Not rage. Desperation. I didn't think you'd actually leave, he admitted. There it was. The truth, raw and unpolished. He never thought I'd walk. He thought I'd bend. Adapt. Stay. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in weeks. I didn't think you'd force me to choose myself, I said. He didn't respond. Because there was nothing left to negotiate. Only consequences. That night, as he slept on the couch again, I lay in bed fully awake, staring at the ceiling the way I had 2 weeks earlier. But this time I wasn't recalibrating. I was preparing. Because when someone loses control, they don't go quietly. They escalate. And I could feel it coming. I didn't wake up angry. That surprised me. I woke up clear. No buzzing thoughts, no rehearsed arguments, no urge to prove anything. Just a quiet certainty that settled into my chest like it had always been waiting there. Dylan was still asleep on the couch when I got out of bed, one arm hanging off the side, phone clutched loosely in his hand like a lifeline. I didn't wake him. I showered, dressed, made coffee. Normal things. The kind of normal that only exists right before a life changes direction. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened the folder labeled Wedding. Venues, catering, photographer, florist. All the things we'd chosen together. All the things I was about to undo, alone. I made the calls calmly. The venue was partially refundable. The caterer kept the deposit. The photographer was understanding, kept half. I thanked them all like this was just another administrative task. Because for me, it was. By noon, the wedding no longer existed outside of memory. Dylan still didn't know. He texted around 11. We need to talk. I'm scared we're losing each other. I didn't reply. Instead, I packed. Not dramatically. No throwing clothes into bags. No sobbing over memories. Just my things. My work files. My books. The records I'd collected long before I met him. My grandmother's china he'd always complained about because it didn't match anything. I left the engagement ring on the nightstand. Not as a statement, as a fact. By the time Dylan came home, the apartment looked different. Lighter. Echoing. He stopped short when he saw the empty closet. What's going on? He asked. I stood in the living room, keys in my hand. I canceled the wedding, I said. The words landed heavy. What? He breathed. The vendors have been notified, I continued. I'll send you the breakdown of deposits later. His face drained of color. You can't do that without talking to me. I did talk to you, I replied, multiple times. This is insane, he said. You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. I'm responding. He laughed, a sharp, disbelieving sound. This is because of those guys, isn't it? He said. They're getting in your head. I met his eyes. No, I said. This is because of you. He stepped closer. You're really walking away, he asked, after 4 years? I didn't flinch. Yes. His voice dropped. You'll regret this. I shook my head. I would have regretted staying. That was when the mask finally cracked. He reached for me, not gently. I stepped back. Don't, I said. He froze. And in that moment, I saw it clearly. Not love. Not desperation. Ownership. I walked to the counter and placed a single sheet of paper down. I left you something, I said. You should read it. He stared at it like it might explode. Then I picked up my bag. I'll be staying with a friend while we sort out the apartment, I added. My lawyer will contact you about recovering the deposits you didn't contribute to. He didn't speak, didn't chase me, didn't apologize. He just stood there, stunned, holding the remains of a plan he thought he controlled. At the door, I paused. Not for him, for me. I hope you get everything you wanted, I said quietly, just not at someone else's expense. Then I left. I didn't cry in the car, didn't shake, didn't call anyone. I drove in silence, feeling something unfamiliar bloom in my chest. Relief, because the wedding was over. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't. The calls started before I even unpacked. I'd barely set my bag down at my friend's place when my phone lit up like it was possessed. Dealin'. Again. And again. And again. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The voicemail notifications stacked up anyway. I let them sit there, unread, like evidence. Then the text came. Camille, this is not funny. You don't get to cancel our wedding without a discussion. I'm calling the venue myself. There has to be a mistake. They said you already canceled. What did you tell them? You're having a breakdown. Come home so we can talk. That one almost made me exhale a laugh. A breakdown. Because apparently, when a woman makes a firm decision a man doesn't like, it must be a psychological event. I still didn't respond. An hour later, the tone shifted. We can fix this. We can go back to monogamy. I'll cut contact with her. I'll delete her number. I already did. See? Proof screenshots followed. Too late. Then came the bargaining. We've invested 4 years. You're throwing away our life over a misunderstanding. I booked a couples counselor. Tuesday at 3. She specializes in conflict resolution. Then the pivot. The blame. This is because of those men, isn't it? They're manipulating you. They just want to sleep with you. They're laughing at you behind your back. I read that one twice. Not because it hurt. Because it exposed him. In his mind, no one could care about me without an angle. Because that's how he operated. When I still didn't respond, he escalated. He started calling my family. My mother was the first to warn me. She called, voice light, but curious. Sweetheart, she said. Dylan just spent 20 minutes telling me you're unstable. I closed my eyes. What did he say exactly? I asked. That you're being influenced by predatory men, she replied. That you're not yourself. That you need an intervention. I let out a slow breath. And what did you say? I asked. She laughed. Actually laughed. I asked him why a woman leaving an engagement automatically means she's lost her mind. I smiled despite myself. He didn't like that, she added. No, I said softly. He wouldn't. He didn't stop with my mother. He called my father, my brother, my cousin. Same script every time. Camille's having a crisis. Camille's being manipulated. Camille doesn't know what she's doing. By Saturday afternoon, the messages shifted again. Anger this time. You humiliated me. You embarrassed me in front of my family. You made me look like the villain. I didn't reply. Because he didn't look like the villain. He revealed himself as one. Then, almost as an afterthought, came the twist. The woman he'd wanted to explore connections with? She wasn't available. One of the men I'd spoken to reached out. Not to gossip, just to be honest. Apparently, Dylan had shown up at her place unannounced after I left. Declared himself finally free. Spoke about destiny, timing, and growth. Her response? She had a boyfriend. Had always had a boyfriend. What Dylan had been nurturing for months, those long talks, those emotional check-ins, had existed almost entirely in his head. When she rejected him, he lost it. Raised his voice. Accused her of leading him on. She blocked him. And suddenly, the open relationship he'd demanded wasn't empowering anymore. It was devastating. That night, I finally sent one message. Just one. Please stop contacting my family. Direct any further communication through my lawyer. His reply was immediate. So that's it? You're really doing this? I didn't answer, because there was nothing left to explain. The meltdown wasn't my responsibility. It was the consequence of someone realizing too late that control only works when the other person agrees to give it. And I didn't. By the time the noise died down, something unexpected took its place. Quiet. Not the heavy kind that presses on your chest. The good kind. The kind that gives you room to think. Dylan tried one last time midweek, formal this time. An email. Subject line reflection and moving forward. I almost admired the audacity. He wrote that he'd had time to process, that he acknowledged he might not have communicated his needs clearly, that he was willing to forgive my overreaction. Forgive. He listed conditions. I must cut contact with the men I'd seen. We would restart wedding planning immediately. I should apologize to his family for the embarrassment. We would attend couples counseling, one he'd found who specialized in male emotional neglect, and I needed to acknowledge my role in misunderstanding the open relationship. At the bottom, he added a postscript about dividing time in the apartment. Weekends for him, weekdays for me. Like custody. Like he still got to assign me space. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with one word in the message body. Evidence. Then I replied to Dylan. One word. No. His response came back instantly. That's it? Just no? Yes, just no. Because anything more would have been a negotiation. And I was done negotiating my worth. The last thing he sent before going quiet was a warning. You'll regret this when you're alone. I sat with that for a moment. Alone. It used to scare me. I thought of all the times I'd swallowed discomfort to keep peace. All the moments I'd adjusted myself smaller so our future wouldn't wobble. I wasn't afraid of being alone anymore. I was afraid of being with the wrong person and calling it commitment. A week later, I met a few friends for dinner. Not dates, not rebounds, just people who had shown up without conditions. We laughed. Not about Dylan, about life, about work, about how strange it felt when tension finally leaves your body. Someone joked that Dylan was telling people I'd been brainwashed. I shrugged. Let him talk. Control narratives all you want. Truth doesn't need defending. As for me, I'm staying with my friend for now, apartment hunting slowly. Gym routine back on track. Work steady. Mind clear. I'm not dating. Not because I'm scared. Because I don't need to fill the silence with validation anymore. The wedding would have been next month. Instead, I booked a solo hiking trip. Mountains, quiet trails, no reception. Something I'd always wanted to do. Something Dylan used to call impractical. Funny how that works. He wanted freedom. He just didn't expect me to take mine and leave. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's simple. When someone demands an open relationship through threats, it's not about openness. It's about power. And the moment you stop playing along, they lose it. I didn't walk away empty-handed. I walked away clear. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with my story. Not because it was dramatic, not because it was satisfying to watch someone implode, but because stories like this matter. They matter because so many people stay quiet when they're given ultimatums disguised as growth. They stay because they don't want to look difficult. They stay because they've already invested years, memories, plans, and they convince themselves that love means adapting, no matter how much it costs them. It doesn't. Love doesn't come with threats. Freedom doesn't require permission. And growth should never demand that one person shrink so the other can feel powerful. If someone tells you, accept this or I walk, believe them. They've already decided whose needs come first. Walking away isn't failure. Sometimes it's the first honest thing you've done for yourself in years. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of something you've lived through, you're not alone. Feel free to share your thoughts, your experiences, or just say you were here. And if you want more stories like this, slow burn, real, and unapologetically honest, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We're building a space where clarity comes before comfort, and where choosing yourself is never the wrong ending.